Okay, seeing it's past the 10 o'clock hour, the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte and the governing body of all other special assessments and taxing districts for which said board so acts is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at that assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. Supervisor McClure, could you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Are there any new employees to be introduced? Director Blacknick.
Come on up, Dan. Actually, he's not a new employee.
Yeah, I was going to say Dan.
Dan Cumber has been with the alcohol and drug program since year 2000, but he has just been appointed our new coordinator for the alcohol and drug program. So I wanted to introduce you all to him again and welcome him.
Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be of service here, and I thank you for your ongoing support. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Congratulations.
And I would like to say that you're an excellent choice. Thank you. From experience of working with you.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Counselor, any reportable actions from closed session?
Nothing to report today.
Nice. Okay, so at this point, are there any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda at this time? In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors.
Yes, Chair, pull 10, please, item 10.
Okay, we are pulling item 10 for discussion. Let's go into any other corrections or additions? Okay, so now we'll hear brief reports and announcements from board members related to programs, projects, travel, and committees. Supervisor Finnegan, could you start us off?
Sure. So right after the last meeting, we had 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with the first 5. Got together and talked about the family resource and partnerships. Then I had an airport JPA meeting in preparation for the Coastal Commission. So we talked about some of what we expected to happen at the Coastal Commission, who would speak. Then I attended the Coastal Commission meeting down in Eureka, Environmental Love Fest, and spoke to them. I did ask them to please not, we knew about several of the conditions, but some of the conditions didn't happen until early that morning. And one of them had to do with not allowing us to do construction year-round, which you know can be very problematic. They wanted to restrict it to from July to October, and asked that they not do that. And also what had been previously agreed to as far as mitigation sites, they steered back towards Pacific Shores, so further restricting lands that would be available to us. Anyway, they decided not to adhere to that request, that they went ahead and did give us the coastal permit, which was good, so we can proceed forward. However, some of those requirements were less than desirable. Ones like allow for fences that have, apparently now there's not only frogs out there, there's turtles. So make sure, you know, and what they don't get is, and I know you said on it, Martha, but what agencies like that don't get is that trees, birds, wetlands do not belong at airports, and that this is a safety issue. Anyway, they also, the arrogance of that committee brought up the fact that we have a no net loss. And they questioned that no net loss, and they questioned the fact of why would we, this Board of Supervisors, want to interfere with a willing buyer and a willing seller without acknowledging the fact that the willing buyer was using my money as a taxpayer. And so they unanimously voted to, that was not on the agenda, they voted to send a letter to the Coastal Conservancy, and I'm not who else was CC'd on that, to tell them that the Coastal Commission was advocating that they now be allowed to purchase any properties they wanted, especially at Pacific Shores, not adhere to the restriction of the Board of Supervisors. And then they questioned me, why would we do something like that? And I explained to them that it was, we have limited resources. If it was not for the fact that the county had stepped in and tried to prohibit some of those sales, that we would in fact have no land to offer as mitigation. And without even getting into the issue of what we deal with in the forest, whether it was Goose Creek, whether it was Mill Creek, whether it was some of these the Alco properties, just being specific to Coastal Commission territory, and stating that yes, we'd be more than happy to enter into communications with any state agency, albeit the Coastal Commission or Coastal Conservancy, and but there needed to be some sort of recognition of perhaps a mitigation bank. So you want to start buying property and taking it away from us, much like we got the lack of credit that we would get for Point St. George. So when you take this stuff off the tax roll, whether it's an agent of the government or the government agency, there needs to be some recognition that this had value for mitigation purposes, and when they're willing to do that, I'm more than willing to get down at the table with them. So that was that little. So it was a victory, but it was a disappointing. It was a colored one. I then had a meeting regarding land use with some staff. Went and had a CSAC call-in, as I usually do on Mondays, regarding where we are with legislation and some of the agendas with the officers. Had a UROC 2x2 down in Klamath, where we talked about some issues, and something that came out of it was to support having a workshop between our Board of Supervisors and their council, the tribal council, to really begin an understanding of how each government works and what the responsibility is, where we get our funding, what our responsibility is, and let them, instead of supposing what we do and why we take money and don't give services or whatnot, what we're really responsible for, and then we can lay it alongside, and that's the basis for understanding one another, which leads to, I think, a greater acceptance of trust. So that's in the works. I went to Sacramento and participated in the CSAC audit, which turned out perfect, and then had a meeting yesterday with our council and tri-agency members, moving along some issues there. And that was about it.
Thank you. Supervisor McClure.
Yes, thank you. I too attended the Coastal Commission, and just one correction, I don't believe it was a vote. I think it was a direction to send a letter. But we did get a permit, and which was a monumental feat as far as I'm concerned, because it was the first time since I've been on the commission where there's been a combination of acquisition and wetland restoring that counted towards mitigation. So that was a step in, I believe, the right direction. The Historical Society, we met and everything's going fine. We went through a lot of current new acquisitions that we've received, and I can say that we've received a slot machine that was part of the Patrick's Creek from Wally Griffin, and it's a pretty cool little device that's going to be at the museum. The Redwood Park Association met, and we had quite a spirited discussion in relationship to the hostel and an attempt to get the hostel back on track for Redwood National Park. And I think the superintendent heard that conversation, and hopefully that hostel discussion is going to come back to looking at possibilities of where to place a hospital in Del Norte County. I met with the Humboldt Area Foundation, and we went over about a 2.5-hour meeting of list of possibilities of what kinds of activities we can be doing. Primarily, we discussed the possibility of the culinary training center that it's going to come before us at our next meeting from our CDBG feasibility. And I have copies of that if anyone would like to read them ahead of time, because it's a very extensive proposal, and it's a tight proposal. I had a healthcare district 2x2 on trying to figure out what to do next, and I'll let Supervisor Sullivan go into detail if he wants onto that meeting. That's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes, thank you. Had George McDougall from the OHV Division of California State Parks came up to visit with myself and staff on some possible grant applications for some OHV areas. They had some good suggestions, so we'll be in touch with him. Hopefully his boss will be up, Colin somebody, I don't remember his last name, but he's going to be come up to visit with us also. So hopefully we'll get some of that going. As Supervisor Finnegan said, we did have a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting. Like he said, to see who was going to speak there. He did a great job, I think, as well as Misha Schwartz and Bob Black. They didn't have any yeah buts things in there where everybody else did. Seems to be a real, like David said, a real love fest down there. They all were in supportive of the project, but they wanted to see more restrictions and more mitigation and more of this and more of that. And, really disappointing because I think we really went out of our way to come up with a good plan for an area that we're going to affect of low quality, maintained, man-made wetlands that are basically going to still be there when we get done. So in some ways it's great that we got the CDP, and other ways it was disappointing with the added restrictions at the last minute that they put in, as Supervisor Finnegan said. Had a 2x2 with the Yurok tribe, and we are going to, like David said, we're going to get together with our board and their council and iron some things out. So look forward to that. Yesterday afternoon had a LAFCO meeting. The Del Norte County Fair wants to form a special district, which will go through LAFCO, and we're certainly supportive of that. And hopefully that will go through without a hitch. And also the LAFCO is going to send a letter of support to the Local Transportation Commission for the last chance grade alternate route possibility, and see if we can't get that going. That's about it for me. Oh, I had a bunch of constituent stuff, a little more than normal. All spectrums. I mean, seemed to be, I don't know whether it's the week or the month of it, but had a lot of calls, and not that I'm not complaining about that. I don't know all of the issues that are going on. If you have an issue, more than happy to help. Please give me a call.
Thank you. Supervisor Gillen.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Also a busy couple of weeks. Thursday, September 12th, I attended the monthly Redwood Coast Transit meeting. No significant action to report there. Last Saturday evening, I attended the Republican fundraiser at Ocean Air Farms, where Del Norte County welcomed State Republican Party Chair Jim Perulti and 33rd District Assembly member and candidate for Governor Tim Donnelly to our county. The next day, Angela and I hosted a wine and cheese by the sea event given for Tim, for all those who were able to meet and speak with him on a more intimate basis. Tim and I are longtime friends. We met at the border down in Campo, California, after 9/11. On Monday, September 16th, I attended the funeral of retired Del Norte County Sheriff Detective Sergeant Robert Long. I did not know Bob, but I felt very connected to him, being a supervisor and then hearing his role in the county. I heard the word law enforcement. I also heard that he was very much a peacemaker in his role as a law enforcement officer. He gave many years of his service to Del Norte County, and I'm glad to have participated in recognizing all of his accomplishments here. On another note, I want to also wish Crescent City Police Sergeant Eric Apperson a speedy recovery after he was returning from Oregon with his newly purchased motorcycle. He lost control of the bike along 199. He narrowly avoided 2 elk along the road. Sergeant Apperson is recovering at home, so I wish him the best. And as you know, a week earlier he had been recognized at the Cultural Center and awarded a Medal of Valor rescuing a stranded, injured woman in Ender's Beach last April. So I wish Sergeant Apperson a speedy recovery. He is truly a Del Norte County hero. On Monday afternoon, I was part of a conference call learning about the role of American Bail Coalition and its effect on the impending assembly, implementing the Assembly Bill 109, which changes which changes the way those who break our laws are to serve their sentences. As always, it's about the money, and I found my predisposed ideas on those accused of crime needed a bit of updating. Many in our community use the word jail and prison interchangeably, and they are quite different, of course. I felt the American Vale Coalition might offer a slightly different take on how we may keep our streets safe and yet deal with the realities of the state budget, which is cutting back on corrections. I referred the group to our California State Association of Counties Justice Administration Policy Committee for further review and possible presentation down with that body. Thursday, September 19th, I traveled to Weaverville for the North Coast Air Quality Management District meeting. I see Director Rick Martin is here. At the meeting, we discussed the U.S. Forest Service lack of aggressive cutting back of its trees. The federal policy is not clear on whether forests should be cut back or allow the forest to burn, with the results of our Del Norte County air suffering. And I hold up yet another wild smoke public service announcement. These seem to be daily, that our air is not as clean as it could be. And this is as a result of these forest fires that are running rampant. I'm not sure that we're in complete control of them yet, but it is fouling our Del Norte County air. The board also took action to join an amicus brief for the Air Quality District in Pismo Beach regarding an appellate court appeal challenging the AQMD's authority to challenge motorized vehicles kicking up sand in the state parks. The lawsuit requires a permitting process with state parks for those who enjoy operating these vehicles within the system. I oppose joining this amicus brief as yet another layer of government extracting another fee from the public. Our A1 Agency on Aging sent 3 letters on behalf of the advisory board. Letter number 1 was a letter to Sutter Coast Hospital CEO Linda Horn opposing the possible move toward regionalization and the devolvement of the hospital status from acute care to critical access. Letter 2 was sent from the advisory board to our local transportation commission, urging the governance to recommend the review and implementation of an alternate route around Last Chance Grade. And letter number 3 was a recommendation to Governor Brown to sign Senate Bill 156, which protects conserved adults from being charged exorbitant fees by their conservator and acts as a deterrent to any unfair padding of costs. At our local formation commission meeting last night, Supervisor Hemmingson referred to this already. We heard some comments from Chuck Blackburn, former Supervisor, District 3, during the public comments section. Supervisor Blackburn, who co-chairs a local advocacy committee on Last Chance Grade, asked LAFCO to write a letter of support to the Del Norte County Local Transportation Commission to urge immediate action to Caltrans to dust off its 2003 report, which is a study of Last Chance Grade, and make the decision to fund and build an alternate route around this precarious spot on the 101. As a matter of infrastructure nature, LAFCO does indeed have a say in writing this letter of support and joins the Chamber of Commerce and the A1 Agency on Aging in voting to send out the letter. The vote was 4-1 yesterday by commissioners. Also spoke with a constituent who alerted me to a potential agricultural problem in our county. It's a B-rated weed called tansy ragwort. It's quite omnipresent around Del Norte County. Tansy ragwort is an invasive weed species that, if left untreated, can cause great harm to our local agricultural community. There is an active ordinance to abate this weed. I referred this to Agricultural Commissioner Ken Smith and Deputy Commissioner Jim Buckles, who are working with the Del Norte Weed Management Area, the Solid Waste Authority, Natural Resources Conservation Service, and Fish and Wildlife to remove this nasty weed. A constituent also referred me to the September Newsmax article entitled "Cities Turn to Private Firms to Avoid Detroit-Style Bankruptcies." The article underscores the challenges facing cities and counties in providing services with depleting property tax revenues. I have asked our auditor Clint Shadd, assessor Louise Wilson, and tax collector Sean Langston to report to the Board of Supervisors the status of incoming funds as a result of the current declining property tax base, and I'm hopeful those individuals can shed light on the fiscal future for Del Norte County. And again, it must be September, school's back in session. Another constituent has made me aware there's an ongoing speeding problem on El Dorado near Bess Maxwell School. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour, but according to the mother of a child attending Bess Maxwell, vehicles are traveling well in excess of that, and it looks like traveling is northward, so it looks like these are students who are probably running late to Del Norte High School, and we'll be meeting with several mothers toward the end of this week, looking for remedies to slow the traffic down. Kids walking to and from school and speeding vehicles is a very bad mix. And finally, September 24th, today is a rather auspicious day. Today, at about 9:30, marked the Martian rover Curiosity's 1-year anniversary on the red planet. She's still operating perfectly. Amazing. Congratulations to all the fine scientists at JPL. That's my report.
Thank you. Okay, attended a healthcare district with Supervisor McClure, healthcare district 2x2 meeting, and we discussed alternatives to where we're at right now. One of them was to reach out to Asante and Venice, and I think there's more to come on that. It was a long meeting, but I do think we're going to go forward with a couple different ideas here. Attended the annual Republican Central Committee fundraiser dinner where Supervisor Gillen had mentioned the different speakers that were there. It was at Ocean Air Farms. It was under the tents, and it was actually turned out it was really well done. So, didn't realize how cold it gets at Lake Earl though at night. So, other than that, attended agenda review. And then Supervisor Finnegan and I are going to be attending the annual RCRC meeting in El Dorado County here over the next couple days. So we'll give you more on that. I would ask that if the CAO can contact the airport, the Board Coast Airport Authority for an update on that coastal development permit. That is disturbing that the Coastal Commission is actually reaching out and trying to direct policy within the county that has nothing to do with the coastal zone. So I'd like to get an update at the next meeting on that. Also, just an FYI for those folks listening and those folks in the audience, all of the board meetings, this actually is a pretty important part of our meeting, is when each of the supervisors basically report out as to what we've been doing and what meetings we've been attending. I think sometimes there's a little confusion that there's some secret meeting, or, you know, one, we report out on all the meetings we attend. To the 2x2 meetings that we're all part of, and you can go on the website, or you can call the county and ask for a copy of all the committees that we each sit on, and there are several. I think the minimum is 10 to 11 per person that sits on this board. Those meetings are agendized and publicized. So I would encourage you to reach out. Just want to clear up confusion that if people think that there's meetings going on without the public aware of them, you are fully made aware of what's going on, and we also report back at the meetings. So I would encourage you to contact your supervisor in your district, any one of us for that matter, if you have questions about that. Obviously it's a public government, so all that stuff has to be out there. So anyway, just to clear up the confusion, because I had a couple conversations with folks last week, and there's just misinformation out there as to the process of what the board does. So, okay. And other than that, we will go, and now we'll hear from our county administrative officer, Jay Serena. Could you give us a brief report on what you've been up to?
Well, the focus of the last week was dealing with finalizing the budget, as well as employee negotiations, and a report that we've gone through a couple of negotiating sessions, and things seem to be going very positive. We've been dealing with some of the review of the legislation, and there's a couple of items on the agenda today for board consideration. Dealing with various departmental issues when approached by those departments. Dealing with some issues, public issues that some of the board members have brought forward. We've met with I met with the new grand jury foreman recently, and also met with Brandon Ida, who is a representative of Senator Boxer's office. He was in town and wanted to meet for a few minutes and talk over some of the issues that the board's been discussing lately. Attended the UROC 2x2, went through an exit interview on CDBG monitoring. It's not an audit, it's monitoring now. And that seems to have gone well, and that includes the Harbor District. The county board, the Board of Supervisors contributed $5 million several years ago to basically initiate that project and assist. And it appears everything's going fairly well with that. And as far as the monitoring is concerned, we'll hear if they have any issues. They seem to be minor if there's any. And also continuing the negotiations with Delaware Ambulance.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, that's it for the report, so we're going to go into the consent agenda, minus number 10. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any public comment, which would be listed in the agenda as item 1 through 9. And as mentioned, item 10 is going to be pulled separately. So any public comment on those items? Okay, not seeing any public comment. I will bring it back to the board. Tony, could you please pull the vote?
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, item 10, approve and authorize the chair to sign agreement with Canyon Manor from September 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014, not to exceed $180,000 as requested by Director of Health and Human Services. Supervisor Gitlin, you pulled this.
I did, Chair Sullivan. Mr. Blatnick, is there a qualified psychiatrist on this program? It spends $180,000 services in Novato. Is there a psychiatrist in the loop? It looked like it was social workers.
No, there is a psychiatrist on staff.
All right, because it's signed by a social worker, and so there is psychiatric help. How many individuals will be affected by this?
Well, there are currently 2 people.
2 people, 180,000. Is this? I'm not understanding. Are you anticipating a greater?
Possibly. Also, it also covers any additional expenses that might occur beyond the day rate. These facilities, there is a cost to these facilities, significant cost. However, it is less of a cost than a state hospital, which is the only alternative and is rarely used by counties anymore. But that alternative would be many times more than this cost.
Well, I was reading through the 20-plus pages. Unfortunately, I did not get my board packet till late Friday afternoon, so it's difficult for me to follow up with all of the reading here in a timely manner. But I'm wondering if there's a local avenue in which to treat these people who have these needs. I've asked that before.
Actually, Director Blatnick,
Yes.
$287 for 2 people on a daily basis for long-term care is cheap. I don't know if you looked. I can tell you from my other occupation, it can be considerably higher just for long-term care services.
What I'm looking at, Chair Sullivan, is $180,000.
Yeah.
Up to. That's the maximum it can go to. Not to exceed.
Not to exceed.
So, that's actually relatively cheap.
Yeah, this is pretty typical rates, and these are very unique facilities that are large, and they have an extensive number of staff, full-scale professional staffing, and these facilities are multi-million-dollar facilities, and they also provide the important piece of having it a locked facility. And those facilities are spread around the state of California, and we utilize several of them.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment on this item, number 10 on the agenda? Okay, seeing no public comment, Tony, could you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
No.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, so we are on to the other items of time, so we're going to go to item 14, which is under general government, a request to direct staff to explore text amendment to non-coastal zoning ordinance general provisions, Delaware County Code 20.47, in order to identify suitable disposal sites for materials originating along the state highway system as requested by Caltrans, and present information to the Planning Commission before returning to the Board of Supervisors as requested by Community Development Department Planner. Randy, you want to?
Just kind of give you a brief overview of what we're requesting here. This, as you stated, would just basically be direction from the board to staff. We've been approached by Caltrans as well as by the County Road Division, basically looking to expand on the general provisions. If you look at page 3 or 4 of this particular item, under section 2048.020, you'll note that public uses are permitted within any zone district, but they're restricted to a building. So what we'd be looking for here would basically be looking into this particular issue, seeing if there's any way to expand that. Obviously, if we can take it away from being restricted to a building, subject it to a conditional use permit process in CEQA, that could be a good thing for everybody. So that's what we're looking for here.
Okay. Any questions?
Any ideas of where we're looking? Or is it too premature to even?
It's premature at this point. There are a couple sites on 199 that are possible. There's a couple rock quarries. The Chevy pit potentially could be one. But it is preliminary, and I'm sure there'll be other sites after the board takes action on this. The staff could explore in conjunction with Caltrans that may be ideal.
Okay.
So, Chair Sullivan, I don't think you require a motion if you see
Oh, yeah,
unanimity. So
Okay.
direct, I would ask you to.
Okay. Any public comment on this item? Yes.
Yesterday, I don't know if, my name is Susan White. I just wanted to bring aware to you guys that yesterday afternoon, coming back from a possible cancer treatment, we were stopped for about 4.5 hours out on 199. A truck with a large deal of lumber had fallen over and turned over into the line of traffic, and it took 4.5 hours for them to clear the area. So it never really was probably in the paper or anything about it, but it was yesterday morning, possibly about 8 o'clock when it started, and then it was, I don't know if the man made it out, but the whole cab was smashed and everything. It was on 199 right by Patrick's Creek, and it's going to get worse in that area.
But I guess the item on the agenda
Yeah, that's
is
the one
about
I'm just-
disposal sites.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I just wanted to let you guys be
Okay.
aware that our roads are getting worse coming in and out of this county, and it is becoming a really, I truly feel sorry for the board that you have to find some way that we can have safer roads on 199 and coming down the grade.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? We're going to give direction to staff at this point to pursue this, and so it doesn't require a vote on the board's behalf at this point. Going on to item 15, a request that the board appoint Heidi Kunstl as the interim community development director at an A5C step as requested by County Administrative Officer.
The board is aware that we've recently gone through a recruitment process, and it was rather thin in regards to the final applicants, and at this point, in order to deal with some of the issues in the department, the recommendation before you would be to have Ms. Kunstl as the interim until such time as some solutions can be made and long-term solutions be implemented.
Okay. A board question?
I'd move that the board appoint Heidi as the interim community development director in A5C step as requested,
Second.
even though that was sort of a backhanded compliment you
It's,
just got.
yeah, moved and seconded. Any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Tony, could you, this is a financial one, can you pull the vote, please?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes, as long as we get a speech from Ms. Kunstl, too.
I just wanted to thank you for your faith in me, and I look forward to this opportunity. And as always, my door is open, so if you have any concerns about our department, please stop by and see me or give me a call.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Heidi.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, we're going to go to item 16, discuss and take possible action to declare a vacancy of the Office of District Attorney in accordance with Government Code Section 1770G as requested by County Council. Gretchen, if you want to give us a briefing.
Yes.
Government Code Section 1770 basically creates vacancies. It outlines when a vacancy is created in an office within the county government, including such elected offices. Under subsection G, it states that a vacancy would be created when an officer is unable to fulfill their duties for a period of 3 months. At this point, Mr. Alexander has been suspended from the state bar since April 5th, I believe it was. And he's been unable to fulfill his statutorily mandated duties under the government code to prosecute cases within this county due to the state bar's action of suspending his license indefinitely. Based on the research I've done and conversations I've had with the state bar trial attorney, it could be anywhere from another 3 to 4 months before such point as the review department makes a decision on whether or not his suspension will remain in place. And then another 3 to 4 months after that before the Supreme Court will take any action on the recommendations from the trial court. So at this point, he's not able to fulfill those statutory duties. So I wanted to present this to the board to discuss and see if there's any steps that you wish to take.
Okay. Board members?
Yeah, there's obviously a vacancy and a need to do something about it. My question before I make the motion is, what happens if he is successful in his appeals? Then how is reinstatement done?
My anticipation is that there would be an ability to do so, but at this point I haven't found any actual mechanism in my research on how that would actually go about. But since you're appointing basically what would be an interim district attorney to fill out his term until the next election, if he should get reinstated back in, it's an interim, so they're not going to have the right to the entire term. It's going to be an interim, which means at some point they may, and I think it'd be important at the time if you appoint an interim to make sure that that's clear to them, that this is an interim. If this should happen, that he gets reinstated and can come back in.
Will that be under the auspices of this board or the Attorney General?
Which?
Reinstatement for him.
It's going to end up being this board in conjunction with the Attorney General.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Well, there's an elephant in the room. There's a vacancy over there, and I think that the board ought to acknowledge the fact that there is a vacancy, that we do not have, that the unfortunate situation is that the elected district attorney doesn't have the ability to practice law, and that mandates that we find a vacancy over there.
So is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any public comment on this item? Yeah.
I'm Shirley. My name is Susan White again, and I'm coming forward to you guys to know that you have another position that is a board supervisor position that needs to be terminated, and that is Miss Katie Mix. I have sent paperwork to all of you folks. I don't feel that she would be a replacement for John Alexander. She is now, right now, have an open case with the bar for incompat of her position. I loaned her money when she was a private attorney at one time, and now she's using her office, and I feel that I know that all of you folks have had the paperwork put in front of you and everything, and I truly believe that she would not, I would like to see her office vacated because of her misuse of her position. So I would not, I'm asking the board to have her maybe on supervisional, to be relieved of her duties.
Ms. White, the action we're taking today is just to create the vacancy. It's
Well,
to
I
declare a
think-
vacancy in the thing. It's not, it's...
Well, the vacancy, I think the vacancy should be given to somebody from out of our area that has no, like they said.
So that would be a further action. Right now,
Yeah.
the action only is to declare the vacancy. That's it.
But the position she's holding right now is.
The action the board's taking today is to declare the vacancy in the district attorney's office. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. That's all we're
But
doing today.
I just don't want her to fill it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other public comment on this item?
So I'd just like the motion to reflect that it was to declare a vacancy in the office of district attorney in accordance with Government Code Section 1770G.
Okay. Bring it back to the board, unless there's any further comments or questions. I'm going to have any, okay, Tony, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor McClure? Yes. Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes.
Chairman?
Passes unanimously, yes.
Would the board like to discuss any direction to give to staff as far as taking any additional steps for filling the interim position, recruitment or otherwise?
I'd love to see you fly the job.
I would agree. I'd like to see you fly the job immediately. We're in election year next year, and I think forthwith, please fly that position so we get all qualified candidates in the pool.
Okay. Well, unless there's any disagreement, I guess, at this point. Yeah.
And just for clarification for the board, I did look into any notice requirements. Given that this was a public agendized meeting, there was no additional notice requirements that I could find. I have been playing phone tag with Mr. Alexander's attorney for the last few days and haven't been able to reach him.
Okay.
Just for clarification, at this point, Ms. Mix is the Assistant Deputy District Attorney, not at will to the board at this point. She's working out a classification under her job description and would be eligible if it's advertised to also apply for that position on the interim.
Well, I think the consensus of the board is to fly the position and recruit for it. And since nobody's disagreeing, that's what you got. So, okay. We are past the public comment period, so we're going to go back to that. It was item 11 in the agenda. It is members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you are addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less and identify yourself into the microphone. So we'll open to public comment now. Yeah.
Good morning, members of the board. Grant Worskell, Smith River Alliance. Couple announcements. One, we have this Saturday will be a cleanup on the National Forest and the National Recreation Area. Anybody interested in that would be meeting at the boat ramp at about 8:30. We will provide lunch for all the participants. And last year, I think in about half a day, 3,000 pounds. So it's pretty easy with the illegal dumping to really get on that, and we welcome all members of the public, and thanks for your collaboration on that. The other announcement is we do have an event which we're doing with some co-sponsors and hosts at Elk Valley Rancheria's beautiful large community room. There's been some press on that, but I just wanted to invite every member of the board and staff. There will be wine and food from the bioregion, great food and wine, including oysters. And it'll be just a neat chance to celebrate, I think, why many of us are here. Incredible county, incredible part of the world, beautiful resources. We have board members from all over, actually, the United States and California. If you'd like to meet them, we'd love to have you be there. And just a good time to mix around and celebrate the place. There will be a small exhibit about a strip mine that is proposed in the headwaters of the North Fork. There's been some press about that. That may afford an opportunity perhaps for further collaboration with you. Many of our state and national partners are looking at it very, very closely. We're rather alarmed about it. It's certainly, in our mind, not in keeping with America's Wild Rivers coast and all the things that we hold dear here in terms of water and clean air. So thanks for your great work and look forward to seeing you. I'll leave some invitations in your offices and hope you can join us.
All right.
Grant, where was the meeting location for the cleanup?
That would be at the Forks Boat Ramp
Okay.
at 8:30, and we will provide lunch for every participant. And there's been some great partners with us on that. If there's no further questions, you can go to our website or call 458-3586 for more information.
That reception is when?
That would be 6 to 9.
This
on
Saturday?
This Saturday at Elk Valley Rancheria, is the beautiful community room where the Economic Summit is.
Got it. Cool. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
My name is Helen Holgate. I'm the SEIU 1021 Field Representative for Del Norte County employees and also a citizen in Martha McClure's area, which I thank you so much for ably representing us. I just want to thank all of you on the Board of Supervisors. I appreciate what you said at the beginning of this meeting. I've been on boards before. I know it is a huge responsibility to attend meetings, to put time in, to go through hours of sitting at tables when all of us have many things, with our families and other things. And I was talking recently with other members here in the county and outside the area about what a beautiful place we live in. So again, I've said, it's like having a large family. We all want things to go well, and we try to do our best, even when it's difficult to do that, to make that happen. And some of the things that I've seen recently just give me a lot of appreciation that everybody is doing the best they're able to do to make things work for the greater good of all the people here and to protect the lovely area that we live in. And I want to thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public speakers? Okay, I am going to close public comment and bring it back to the board, and we now have another timed item, which was timed for, is number 12 in the agenda. It was timed at 10:45. It's a, it's a 10 to 15 minute presentation from the North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District, challenges in California North Coast Air Basin. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the...
Yeah, what was the grease thing? Was that a trip or something?
Yeah, it was.
I think you may turn your mic up just a little bit more. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, and members of the public. My name is Rick Martin. I'm the Air Pollution Control Officer for the North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District. It's the regulatory agency that's responsible for maintaining air quality, improving air quality for the public in the counties of Humboldt, Del Norte, and Trinity. I was invited to attend an air quality conference in Athens, Greece last year. And as a result of a lot of the work that we did on some of the wildfires that really impacted Trinity County and many of the other counties, Siskiyou and others, in 2008. And we had some data that we put together that was a little bit unique, and I was asked to bring the presentation forward to the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors. So with that, see if I get started here. It provided us a wonderful opportunity to exchange district information and work with a wide array of peers throughout the world, literally. There were very many companies or countries that were invited and attended the conference. Most of the papers focused on developing technologies and equipment relating to air quality. They were very technical and detailed. They come out on a very regular basis, but we try to go through them and pull out information that is useful for us and helpful for us. Many of the papers that were presented were helpful, and we use a lot of those activities moving forward. We were allowed contact with discussions and professionals of other countries, and the conference design provided, unfortunately, 3 simultaneous presentations in 3 different locations, so I was only able to attend one at a time. Some of the presentations included measuring ozone and nitrogen dioxide from space, the transport of PM 2.5 and PM fines. PM stands for particulate matter. 2.5 is the size diameter of the particulate matter. PM fines is a new developing technology that will be coming out in the near future, and these are the extremely small or ultra small particles that get into the blood system and other areas of the body as you inhale them. Distribution of ozone precursors in Lake Tahoe, USA was one of the presentations, and another really good one that was applicable, I think, to many areas of the district is the domestic wood combustion impact on air quality. This particular one was in Lombardy, northern Italy, but it certainly had effects elsewhere in the district. And then we are considering now multiple effects and multiple pollutants for comprehensive air quality management as opposed to an independent pollutant. Discussions with colleagues, I thought it was interesting that shortly before my presentation for the conference, one of the principal organizers, Professor Bernard Fisher, who's with the Environmental Agency of the United Kingdom, introduced himself to me and asked how our agency was structured within the political structure of the United States. As I explained how we are structured as a district within the state of California, he commented that when he saw the abstract that we submitted, he was extremely pleased to see it and that we were attending. When I asked him why, he answered that the conferences very rarely have the opportunity to see the real effects of the research that others conduct. As I began my presentation, I was a little surprised to look around the room and not only to see that all seats were taken, but there was barely standing room only. People were crowding into the door from outside the room. During and after the presentation, there were excellent questions concerning the effects of wildfires on communities, transport of pollutants, our methodology for calculating the emissions, the effects of high particulate matter on the population, clean air shelters in place that we had put together, and cooperation by so many agencies. The questioning went on until the moderator finally cut off the questions and ended this session. I had multiple requests for my card, and I have had several follow-up discussions since then with many other peers. This is essentially the presentation that I gave, and please, if you have any questions, let me know as I go through it. As I explained, we are a district, a relatively small area compared to the entire state of California, but we have about 7,800 square miles that we have to look at around here, which is pretty good size. We have hundreds, literally, of microclimates throughout the area, just our area alone, and our district, believe it or not, is about the size of the country of Israel. In 2008, we had wildfires in Northern California that began on June 20th, and we had many different lightning strikes, but unfortunately there were about 600,000 acres of land that burned in and around the district. Out of the 1.3 million acres that burned by wildfires in California, approximately a third, or 30% of the total, burned in Trinity County alone. Wildfires in the district alone cost U.S. Forest Service over $150 million in suppression efforts. I think it's kind of difficult for a lot of people to understand the enormity of some of these numbers, but $150 million is a very substantial amount of money. Countries within or counties within the district only receive less than 5% of the total. Microclimates and scattered population, as I mentioned earlier, present all kinds of challenges regarding communication in rural communities. Within 4 days of the beginning of the fires, we installed at least 11 different meteorological stations and monitoring stations within the district, and we were getting assistance from all over the world and all over the United States. 13 counties, because of this, declared a state of emergency, and wildfires exposed residents to very significant amounts of particulate. Pyrogenic emissions were calculated to be over 8 million short tons, and there were over almost 70,000 short tons per day during the 120-day event. This is a picture that compares two different areas. The one on the left is during a regular air quality day in the district. This particular one is in Hoopa Valley. And you'll see the one right next to it was taken on July 9th, of the exact same area, the Hoopa Valley. There's a substantial difference between the one on the left and the one on the right, obviously. These are just some of the readings that we took in Weaverville, and you'll notice that this is a 24-hour PM 2.5 or small particulate matter average. The highest one that we had 24-hour was 468, and you'll see that the standard is around 35. So we were well above the standard. There were 49 public service announcements issued during the time period. 659 air quality alerts were issued in the district on 70 straight days, with 28 different communities within the district, including many areas in Del Norte. There were 8 hazardous air quality alerts issued. All 8 of those, I believe, were in Trinity County. Trinity County got hit very, very hard. Because the air quality in the North Coast is usually rated as healthy, and we have a pretty good air quality up here, most residents really don't understand how poor our air quality can get during the wildfires. Some of the lessons learned: we had interagency cooperation. All 3 counties worked very well, the Office of Emergency Services and health departments, to make sure that information got out to the population concerning the wildfires and the impact of the smoke from the wildfires. There were a lot of cooperative agencies, including federal, state, and local fire suppression agencies. What we came out of this a little bit was a template that we have created in advance that we've been using this summer, as a matter of fact, because of the wildfires that are going on throughout the district. And it certainly helps in consistency among the different counties and the timeliness of the message from all the counties. We had a lot of good interaction with tribes throughout the counties. We have 3 at least, if not more, that really work very hard to work together with us, and it's been working very well this summer again. And then the clean air shelters were interesting. They were HEPA filters that were put in place. These are high efficiency particulate air filters that were put in place to trap the smaller particles of particulate matter. They worked very well, and it helped provide an emergency shelter for the general public in all 3 counties. We instituted what's called a smoke spotter program. It's been modeled after the weather spotting program that NOAA uses, and we had volunteers from all over the district that understood the difference between fog and smoke and knew how to judge distances. Because of the wide variety of communities throughout the district, we had to use smoke spotters many times to let us know ahead of time what type of action to issue, whether it was a public service announcement or whether it was hazardous air pollutant. They have been asked every year since then to volunteer, and we have more than enough people volunteering on a regular basis. Just to give you a little bit of comparison, EPA estimates that Los Angeles County alone emits about 2 million short tons of CO per year. The fires within the district emitted almost triple that amount during 120 days. CO is carbon monoxide. It's an odorless and colorless gas that can literally kill you in high enough concentrations. CO2 is also created. It mixes with oxygen in the atmosphere and carbon monoxide. It's a greenhouse gas. It has an atmospheric lifetime of about 100 years. And there were 5 million short tons of CO that was emitted. Global impacts: California is leading the United States in greenhouse gas reduction efforts with AB 32 that was passed many years ago now. And while the greenhouse gases are released from natural source, in this particular instance, the emissions from that source still contribute to a greenhouse gas effect and will remain in the atmosphere for many decades to come. They are a very significant source of pollution, and they're not addressed in AB 32. By understanding greater environmental and economic impacts of localized natural disaster, governmental regulatory agencies can better prepare and provide for the common goal of public health and safety. And this is an interesting picture that I just want to point out before we get to the questions. But those trees that you see there in the forefront are approximately 200 feet tall. This is the flame from one of the wildfires. So looking at it in comparison, we're talking about a flame finger coming up at more than 400 feet. So that can kind of give you an idea of how difficult it was and how big the wildfires actually were.
Any questions? Yeah, Supervisor Gitlin.
Rick, you know I'm a great fan of yours in providing us with up-to-date information. I hold up this
Thank you.
wildfire smoke public service announcements, which I seem to get daily. I don't remember receiving them earlier in the year, but lately we've been receiving these things. So it tells me our our air is not as clean as it should be and could be. And since most of our county is owned by federal, the government, I seem to be having a difficult time trying to find out what their policy is. Is it let it burn, or is it cull it back? And I brought this up at the Weaverville meeting, asking our federal partner to essentially step up and do its job and clear down the forest. There doesn't seem to be a clear mission from our U.S. Forest Service on what they want to do. It seems to be inconsistent. Is this correct? They don't have a clear definition of what to do?
I think every national forest has a little bit different interpretation of what they should be doing. They, and not just in our area, but throughout the entire country. There are some that move forward and try to extinguish the fires as quickly as possible, and there are some that try to use the fires as an opportunity to clear away dead materials in the forest. So I agree with you. I'm not sure that there is a really clear definition in Forest Service.
Well, let me just follow up and make it on a more local basis. What's the policy, as far as you know, of the U.S. Forest Service position in Del Norte County, or more specifically your district, which includes Trinity and Humboldt County? Is it a hands-off approach? You know, by practice, I would just say that they're not doing anything. There are a few projects. Coon Mountain Project cut back about 800 acres, but there doesn't seem to be any local interest in culling back the forest here in your district that you supervise. Is that correct?
Do you mean while the forest fires are not burning?
Well, no, they're burning, but they're letting them burn, or they're not culling back the forest. I guess let me reverse that question. They're not cutting back and clearing out, which makes the burns even more aggressive and causing more of these reports like this, which foul our air. And that comes under your purview.
It does. The Forest Service, we've worked with very closely. They do a great job in helping us, and we help them as well. They ask every year for multiple burns so they can try to manage the forest growth. I'm not sure that there is a clear program that is as big as should be to clear the forests. But I do believe the Forest Service is moving forward, trying to clear as much as they can in the limited time and budgets that they have.
Supervisor Hemmingson.
Rick, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it. Do you just collect the information? I mean, are you just collecting data? Is there any enforcement? Is there any?
There is enforcement. We're a regulatory agency. We represent the federal government, the state government, and local government for the 3 counties. We do enforce federal law, state law, and local laws.
And so if this was a private industry that was causing this pollution, you would have some sort of program to make sure that that stopped?
We do have programs in place to make sure it stops, regardless of whether it's public or private.
Okay, so what's your program in place to stop the wildfires?
Well, we don't have anything that can stop wildfires. They are by definition something that we can't plan for. We issue alerts whenever a wildfire occurs, but we don't have staff, we don't have resources. That's not our purview. That's the Forest Service and other parts of the government.
Even though it's the most single air polluting factor in our area, we have we can't enforce this on the Forest Service to manage their property properly.
We do enforce it on the Forest Service within the rules and regulations that we have. There are some that we don't have rules and regulations for, and we don't have staff for that either.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the presentation.
Supervisor Finnegan.
Yeah, going along that lines, I mean, I appreciate your presentation, but speaking to the regulatory side of it, you didn't have a problem with burn barrel emissions.
We did.
You know, you didn't, only because I spoke up against it, I guess it comes as a problem.
Well, we're still working with it.
You know, I guess what I'm getting to, whether it's the Carl Moria program for your diesel emissions, whether it's the diesel emissions that you did with some of drove the trucking industry out of Del Norte County, whether it's the burn barrel things, no matter what it is, you don't seem to have a problem with regulatory issues or fining people. To say that the Forest Service has no control over their forest fires is not true. It's directly related to fuel load. And you do have the ability to control that if you so chose. And so my question is following up, why is your agency, the regulatory agency, and the enforcement agency, not enforcing with fines and with corrective action plans upon the Forest Service the same way that you would it be Simpson Timber Company or Green Diamond?
I'm not exactly sure to what you may be referring. We do enforce against the Forest Service. We have collected fines against the Forest Service. We have issued a notices of violation to the Forest Service for violating our rules and regulations. Each of the different Board of Supervisors in Trinity, Del Norte, and Humboldt counties have representatives on our board that make up our board. We enforce the rules and regulations of the board. We do not currently have any rules and regulations in place to write a notice of violation when a forest fire occurs.
Okay, then I guess I misunderstood then. So you do have fuel load capability?
Not fuel loading capabilities. We have rules that require them to burn in specific manners, in specific times, in specific ways. That's how we look at it, not fuel loading. Fuel loading in a forest varies very significantly depending on the forest that you have, depending on the type of material that you have, and depending on whether or not there have been burns or wildfires in the past.
I guess I'm oversimplifying it. I guess if you don't allow me to do a burn barrel, but you do allow me to do a 3x3 or a 4x4 open pit burn, and I happen to stack a pile of paper 8x8 next to my 4x4 burn, I would expect to get fined if that 8x8 caught on fire.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm sure without stretching it or taking up any more time, you can see the analogy I'm getting at for fuel loads with the forest.
I do.
Thank you.
Well, and I think on that same note, I would encourage our representative on the board to actually get their board to take a stance that I appreciate the presentation in one respect, but I'm also very disappointed in the presentation. Because everything you said in that thing had to do with dealing with the symptoms, not dealing with the cause. We have these massive wildfires because they don't manage the forest. If they went in and managed their forests, we would not have the fires to this degree or this intensity or this size, but they don't. And that's extremely frustrating because it harms from air quality to everyone else, it harms us. Supervisor McClure.
I want to comment a little bit on the fuel loading because I have friends that have private forests that they own, and then there's the lumber companies themselves who aren't subject to a fuel loading formula. Because I can tell you that of the individuals that I know that own a few hundred acres of timberland, that would be a very cumbersome project for them to do to meet a standard for a possibility of a wildfire someday. And I also want to identify that fuel loads, I agree, are extremely different if you're in a madrone forest, if you're in a Douglas fir forest, or if you're in a redwood forest. And that there's no simple fix. And I believe that the Forest Service, along with air quality, take a look at different fires and how they strike. Because we have several fires every year that might are a lightning strike fire that may be, less than an acre in duration and put themselves out. I've also, in my lifetime, I've witnessed trees that have burned for months at a time, that they just smolder internally, and lo and behold, they don't die because they're redwood. So I think that every forest, it sounds simple, but the devil is in the details of looking at forest load, and forest load across a state regulatory group could be a very slippery slope for a small property owner of 200 or 300 acres of timberland.
Except you could take the opposite approach of saying, you know what, we don't care how you manage your forest, but if a wildfire breaks out, you're going to pay a fine. And that's really what it should be, because then they can deal with deal with their problem that way.
Well, and just to be very accurate, I also sit on the CAL FIRE's Demonstration Forest Advisory Team. And there is the formula for how to care for your forest, whether it's fir, madrone. They manage for fire. They did it in Latour. They've done it there are volumes sitting on the shelf. The integration with the private companies as well as the federal can be done because the state does it. It's not an indictment of you, just responding that there isn't a plan. They're there.
Supervisor Gillen.
You know, Rick, we did bring this up at our last AQMD meeting in Weaverville, and the governance decided that they didn't want to take a stronger position on this. I was in a 1-to-4 deficiency vote. In other words, we wanted this federal government, and this is a federal government problem. I'm not going to bring in the private sector when it is currently not a private sector problem. 78% of our county is owned by government interests, mostly the federal government. And in my humble opinion, they're just not doing their job. This has been a long, exacerbating situation that's gone on year after year after year, and it's getting worse, and now we're paying the price for it in this foul air. And that's totally in your purview, the foul air. We can't seem to get our federal partners to step up and do their job, and I made the motion at our last meeting to ask them to step up and cull down the forest. And again, the plans are being made for next year. And the response was, oh no, you know, we got to be more tepid. This is our federal partners. Let's ask them what we can do. And we lost that 1-to-4. So you're of course subject to our governance, and you didn't get the message clearly. I know you're going to write a letter. It's not as strong as I would have liked it to be, but clearly the problem rests on the shoulders of our U.S. Forest Service, who is, because of lack of money or neglect or just a different policy that's not consistent, we're having these terrible wildfires, and they're going to happen, but instead of being small ones, they end up being big ones, and they foul the area, and again ends up us praying for the early rainy season to help the problem out. So that's not the case this year. Our rainfall is off, and because of that, these wildfires continue to burn. So I'm going to continue to bring that back to your attention in future once-a-month board meetings down there, so that we take a position a little stronger than the one that our current AQMB board decided on.
All right. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on to our next timed item since we've gone past that. We are going to go back to item number 13 in the agenda regarding the budget for the county. We're going to conclude the public hearing and adopt the recommended 2013-14 fiscal year final budget and special district budgets by resolution as presented over the course of the budget hearings. Number 1, adopt resolution 2013-039 as a resolution fixing tax rates for fiscal year 2013-14 as required by government code. Number 2, adopt resolution 2013-040 setting the appropriation limits for fiscal year 2013-14. Approve and adopt attachment A outlining staffing changes including elimination or creation of positions as requested by the county administrative officer. Jay.
Well, as presented 2 weeks ago, the recommended budget is balanced, and there has been some minor changes due to some budgetary changes that were submitted into the auditor's office between presentation of the recommended and today. Those reflect in the change in the overall budget, but no effect on the general fund. As I appreciate you reading off all the recommendations, but in attachment A there are a couple of minor changes in conjunction with discussions with the miscellaneous union. There is a recommendation to actually extend out the date of the effectiveness for the senior road foreman position elimination and the establishment of the assistant road superintendent, and also there was an omission in regards to the equipment mechanics, and we would like to reflect that in the reclassifications. It's a single-step compaction issue that we omitted on our end, and so through some very positive discussions with the union, those recommendations are in place today, and we'd like the board to accept those. Overall, the budget has not changed since we spoke last, and if the board has any additional questions at this point, I'm available, as well as the auditor controller and Mr. Young on the personnel end.
Okay. Any question for board members? Okay, seeing no question board member, I am going to, I'll entertain a motion, then we'll open public comment.
Fine. Mr. Chair, why don't you, since we continued the public hearing, why don't you
Oh, that's a good idea.
get rid of it?
Okay. Okay, we'll go to do public comment then. Any public comment on the proposed budget? Okay, seeing no public comment, I'm going to close the public comment period and bring it back to the board.
So since you closed the public hearing,
Yes.
I would make the recommendations 1 through 4.
Okay. It's been moved in second. Tony, could you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure? Yes. Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay.
And I would like to commend not just the administration, but all the department heads, everybody that worked on this, including input from the employees. So, job
Yeah,
well done,
well
balanced
done.
budget. There's more good news to come in the near future.
Yeah, I would like to reiterate what Supervisor Finnegan said. There's a number of people in the audience here that are all involved in this process, and I would like to thank the department heads and the assistants and the fiscal staffs, and especially the people on behind me and one that isn't there, but Mr. Lopez, and then the auditor controller who puts in a considerable amount of time and has to put these numbers together, whether there's changes or no changes. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate the work of the budget team, you know, Neil, Joey, Clint, and yourself, and then the department heads. I just got a flashback of the first year that I was on the board of, we had some department heads fighting hard not to make any changes or not to come up with savings, and now you all come to the table, and we very much appreciate it. It's not as contentious as it was 7 years ago, so it really has made a pretty dramatic change, and I appreciate the department heads as well as the employees' input into the process. It does, when everyone comes to the table, then we get to a resolution a lot quicker, and this is probably the briefest budget vote I think we've ever had, so good job. Okay, we're moving on. Moving on to item 17. Consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the County of Del Norte. Authorize the chair to sign and send appropriate letters with respect to matters pending before the state or federal governments. Jay, any, besides the ones we have listed?
In regards to, do you want to take up 18 first?
Yeah, we can do that.
This is legislation that would be advantageous regarding funding towards additional broadband services, and of course the Board of Supervisors has made broadband one of the highest priorities, and we are in a fortunate position to be the future hub of all broadband that comes into Southern Oregon, Northern California, and again, anytime we get a chance, we will be recommending approvals of and support.
It would be, you know, on that item, just on a side note, it would be great. I don't know when the last time we got an update on the broadband status on the redundancy, because I don't know if Mr. Irwin's still involved in that, or if we can get a you know, comment from, I would really like to find out from Charter or any of the other players in, where are we at and when do we have redundancy? Because we've been told it was supposed to be end of summer, and now we're past that point, so.
I did have a discussion not too long ago, and it appeared that that line was to be completed within the month. And so we'll try to get somebody to give us a final. That was somebody from Charter that had mentioned it. They had a little bit of a glitch going through one property, and it delayed them some. In regards to Mr. Irwin, right now he is not actively under contract with the county.
Okay.
I've been working with Tri-Agency and Connie Stewart in order to deal with the last $20,000 for the last mile assessment between here and Humboldt County, which is now, I think, the biggest focus for broadband in the area. And as soon as we work that out, I hope to see that come under the county, and we bring Mr. Irwin into the fold to complete it, because he is by far the most knowledgeable from the technical end.
Well, so maybe we can get Charter to make a presentation, or at least come to the board with an update on the status, because that is one of the 5 infrastructure projects in the county, and that was and has been the closest to completion. It would be nice to get you know, one win in that process, and you know, I think that'd be a big plus. So anyway, sorry, took you off on a tangent there a little bit, but this is a letter of support for SB 740.
Move to approve.
Second.
Move second. Any public comment on item 18 in the agenda? Okay, no comment. Okay, so we will bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Item 19, approve and authorize the chair to sign letters of support for SB 744 by Assemblymember Dolly, which is a late session bipartisan gut and amend fueled by concerns from the rim fire, which would create a pilot program in the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, which would simplify forest management practice by providing an expansion of the current timber harvest plan exemption in the highest risk fire regions, allowing for harvest of trees less than 24 inches in stump diameter rather than the current 18-inch current limit as requested by County Administrative Officer. Jay?
Well, you just
Just
explained.
explained it, okay. Okay.
The key word in there is bipartisan, which means it has a chance to get through the governor in that sense. It does give some flexibility within the forests, and, well, you know, that's obviously
looking
something
for.
that has been
Move to
supported by the
approve.
board.
Second.
It's been moved second. Any public comment? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, and other than that, item 20, approve and authorize the chair to sign letter of support for AB 1042 Hall, which provides a statewide appropriation of $13 million in Indian Gaming Special Distribution Fund, local mitigation monies for this year as requested by the County Administrative Officer.
Again, a good description. And the Indian Gaming Distribution Fund has been in place for quite some time, and these are paid into by paying gaming facilities. The committee meets hopefully annually to distribute that money, and this year there was one request by the Sheriff's Office. It assists with dispatching calls to the gaming facilities. The requirements of the Indian Gaming Fund are very specific as to having some very close nexus with issues with gaming facilities, which kind of limits that, but this would augment that and allow us to be able to look at those issues and deal with those as the committee sees fit.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to second. Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, review, make any necessary amendments, and adopt the 2014 Del Norte County Legislative Platform as requested by the County Administrative Officer. Item 21 in the agenda.
As the board typically reviews, the ledge platform comes forward, and it has come forward at different times during the previous years. This year, I've introduced it at the time of the budget because I feel that it's appropriate at this time to also be looking at what we do over the next fiscal year regarding legislation. Much of the ledge platform hasn't changed, as many of the issues that are in there they represent what the board has given direction on. This is in conjunction with our advocates at both state and federal level. As you can see, they're separated out pretty clearly. If there are any additional issues that are not noted in there, or if there are any changes the board would like to make, we can do so and bring this back. This is a living document, meaning that if we need to change it midstream, we can do that. We have incorporated some of the more recent issues that the board has taken action, like the support of the Fair District proposal, not taxing, but the what
ability to create a
Supervisor
special
Hemmingson
district.
had mentioned earlier with LAFCO. And then at the federal end, we have brought in a couple of the issues that have been brought up in the board in the past. So if there are any input or any changes, we would like to take those today, and we'll make any amendments, or if it's appropriate, adopt.
Supervisor Gitlin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You know, Jay, I'm reading this, it's about 40 pages, and I don't mean to be critical when I say this, but there's so many syntax and grammar errors in here, it's astounding. And I know this is the first draft, but I hope that someone will read this with a fine-tooth comb, because this is a document that's going to be read, and there needs to be correction in this grammar and syntax. There are some obvious omissions here. I'm looking at specific legislative plan part 3, infrastructure proposal, replacement and upgrades of US Highway 101 at last chance grade, and to maintain a physical connection to the rest of California, the state of California. There's nothing mentioned in there about seeking an alternate route, which I would like that language inserted. It's all about improving it, which, as you know, $30+ million has been spent since 1997 to improve that. So that would be something in that language in the proposal that it be added that an alternate route should be sought. There's no mention whatsoever in Health and Human Services with regard to our current situation with our hospital and the development into critical access. I think that needs to be addressed.
So just a suggestion might be,
So I don't know how you want to proceed on this, Chair, but there...
No, but I mean, what my suggestion would be is that we submit our suggestions or corrections to that, and we put it on the next meeting. Because otherwise, I think we could be here for a while making recommendations. and
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'll put these down in terms of grammar and also other things. I'll highlight these things and bring it to your attention, Jay.
In that case, Supervisor, instead of spending so much time on the grammar, we'll take that on and we'll make those corrections unless you have something that, in particular that changes the meaning of one. We'll do that correction.
There's language too in there, right?
And as far as the language, I would appreciate any comments, and then
Okay.
we'll
So-
add those in and bring it back.
So we'll spend the next few weeks prior to our first meeting in October with, if there's any changes to it, and then we will have it on that following agenda to vote on final, not the final, but the current, I guess, because it's a living document,
Exactly.
right?
It
Okay.
is.
Okay, seeing no other items on the agenda, we will now adjourn the board meeting until our first meeting in October. Thank you.